Okay, welcome everyone. My name is Jocelyn Sang, and I'm welcoming everyone on the call. I think some people are still trying to come in, but hopefully they will join us. Welcome today to students, rowers, coaches, alumni, family, and friends. We trust everyone is keeping well. As a few reminders, we ask that everyone place themselves on mute. It looks good. And please ensure your Zoom profile shows your full name and class year or affiliation so you can be recognized. Thank you to the MIT Alumni Association for enabling this event. We are recording this session. Feel free to type any questions you may have for the speakers in the chat window. The MIT Crew Alumni Association is proud to host this special event in recognition of International Women's Day, which was this past Monday, March 8th, and today, Pi Day. So in that flavor, here are some interesting statistics. At least 35 MIT alumni representing 12 countries have qualified or participated in 11 sports at 28 Olympic Games, and that's nearly all of them. 13 medals were won. And the most common Olympic sport for MIT alumni is rowing, with 10 of the 35 alumni competing. As you're about to see, the Veronica Toro story is a great one for multiple reasons, and the excitement builds with her success from last week at the American qualifiers, competing on behalf of Puerto Rico. We get to share vicariously as Veronica heads to Tokyo this summer. Note that although Olympians train full-time, they are unpaid and depend on scholarships and generosity of others. If you're so inclined, please join me in contributing towards her Olympic quest. The GoFundMe link will be posted in chat. Today's event is a real treat with some of the history-making women among us. As a brief recap to provide some context, rowing is the oldest intercollegiate sport in the United States. The first intercollegiate race was between Harvard and Yale in 1852. Of course, you know, MIT wasn't founded until 1861, 9 years later, but we didn't just jump on the bandwagon. Olympic rowing started in 1900. Actually, modern Olympics started in 1896. Rowing was slated but canceled because of bad weather. Shortly thereafter, 1909, MIT alums raised the money to buy a used 8 shell and started the MIT rowing program. Now fast forward to 1972. Title IX legislation was passed and it fostered growth and opportunity in women's sports. Promptly the next year, 1973, women's rowing started at MIT. And then in 1976, the first women's race was held in the Olympics, which is the lifetime for many of us. The US women took home bronze. US women have medaled tremendously in the Olympics over the years. As two legendary rowers and esteemed coaches who have helped shape this history of women's rowing, we are honored that today Holly Metcalf will introduce our speakers, and Linda Muri will close out the session at the end of the hour. On the eve of Veronica's Olympic journey, here's one of the most inspirational photos. Holly, you may recognize, is in the stroke seat of this 1983 US Women's National Rowing Team. 5 of them would go on to win the gold in the 1984 Olympics. So I think you will agree with me, this is certainly a moment of standing on the shoulders of giants. And without further ado, as the most qualified person to introduce today's speakers, please join me in welcoming Coach Holly Metcalf.
Thank you, Vero. This is such a gift to be able to introduce you. That was a very scary picture. Please don't ever show that again. please. So I think we all know Vero has achieved a great deal. I wanted to introduce her in a little different way. Vero came to the open weight team from the lightweight team, full of her intense work ethic and determination to find her best. And every day, almost without fail, she'd come to the coach's office after practice to ask me how she did. Was my connection any better? How about my acceleration at the finish? Was I the reason the boat was down to starboard? And what she was really asking, did I become who the boat needed me to be today? Did I become who my teammates needed me to be? And these were the questions of a young woman finding a metaphorical mentor, not only in rowing, but in her academic life, her friendships, in her ability to love. So when you watch her compete in her single, remember that you're watching her do more than row. She's being herself to the fullest. So, Vero, tell us all about yourself now.
Thank you. Thank you for such a kind introduction, Holly. You truly were an inspiration when I was on your team. I still remember, actually, I was telling Natasha the other day that I remember, obviously I'm not going to remember the exact words that you would say, but this is how I remember that you said that when you used to race, when there was 500 meters left in the race, you kind of imagined yourself being replaced by a new Holly that was kind of like fresh and not tired and was ready to pull very hard. And I think I have my own way of doing that. You know, when I get to 500 meters left, I actually just count my strokes back, and I don't look at my stroke coach. I don't know anything that's happening. I just count the strokes until I'm done. So I think I do keep that in mind every time I race. Natasha.
Yeah, Vero, it's so good to have you here, and thank you so much for attending this Zoom call. I know that you've been having interviews all week. Huge congratulations to becoming the first woman rower to represent Puerto Rico in the Olympics. It is such an incredible achievement. But if we could scroll back a couple of years, you started rowing at MIT. Could you tell us a little bit about your time here and how that experience informed your journey to where you are now, to the Olympics?
Yes, definitely. So yeah, I started rowing at MIT. I showed up in Boston in the summer of 2012 to do the interface program right before my freshman year. I didn't know what rowing was. I had never seen a rowing boat. I danced ballet for 11 years. And then in high school, I played volleyball. And I knew I kind of wanted to continue doing sport in some capacity, but I was really tall in Puerto Rico and I wasn't that tall to play volleyball in the States. So that kind of was like, okay. I had a TA during my interface program that suggested that because I was very skinny and slightly tall, that I should try lightweight rowing. And so I think I just showed up to the boathouse and I don't know, I tried it out and I liked it. I liked it. I really liked it. I think a lot of what I liked about it was like the ability to be in the water. Like coming from an island, that was I guess a huge appeal to me. But I remember when I first went to the open house, there was this whole thing about if I was going to be a lightweight or not. And I was so convinced that I was going to be a lightweight rower at the time. And I mean, I did it for a whole year. And I mean, I think part of it was like the pride. Like I had never been really like a star in sports or anything, you know, sports was always something I did kind of on the side. I did math Olympics growing up, you know? And so like, to me, the fact that like I somehow like pulled some like okay numbers on the ergometer, and like somehow managed to like get a decent score on the erg, I think that part of that was like the pride of sticking with like lightweight rowing, you know, as a freshman. But you know, then I actually started gaining some muscle, and then it actually became harder to make the weight. And so I made the switch from my freshman to my sophomore year. But, you know, I think definitely rowing is like something I wouldn't have picked up if it wasn't because I went to MIT. Like that was the only reason I started rowing. And you know, it really like held a special place in my journey through MIT. You know, it's something I did every day from the time I started to when I graduated. And, you know, it kind of like helped me grow as a person alongside like all the courses and everything that you're expected to do as an MIT student. You know, I had this solid like base, like home base that I could go to and that I went to every morning while I was there. And, you know, it really meant something to me to have a team at MIT. And, you know, I picked up the single while I was at MIT. I picked it up because I spent the summer in Puerto Rico and I met the Rowing Federation. They were looking for people. And I found out I could have the opportunity to race. But, you know, I always like, at some point they tried to convince me actually to stop rowing for MIT and just train the single for Puerto Rico. But that was never a thought in my head. You know, I would have never gotten through the training if I wasn't part of the program. And that was nonsense to me. Like, you know, from the moment I heard about it, I was like, you know, like they are the reason why I row. So like, there's no point, you know, like, I mean, so I tried to do both at the same time. You know, I rowed with MIT in the morning and rowed my single in the afternoon. Picked up a lot of bad habits in the single because of doing that, because nobody watched me. But, you know, to this day, you know, like racing in the 8 is a lot more fun than racing in the single. You know, there's something special about just like sitting. It's like a privilege to sit in an 8 and like, just like push yourself to the limit and just trust that everyone else is doing it with you. You know, there's no worries about like what happens if I can't pull harder later, like anything like that. You know, there's this trust that you develop in people when you row in a boat of 8 people. And I think it also teaches you to trust people like in other ways, like outside of life, you know. And I've been mumbling for a while, so maybe I'll just let you ask the next question. But yes.
That's beautiful. I mean, there really is something quite magical about being in an 8 and being a part of that greater whole that all has one goal. One thing that really stands out to me is that resilience is such a cornerstone of your journey. It's a cornerstone of the sport, whether you're in an 8, whether you're in a single, perhaps especially when you're in a single. And how would you say that over the years, your resilience has grown or changed? Are there things that you would do now that you wouldn't have before?
That's a great question. I mean, definitely perseverance is like what has like led me to achieve this goal of like going to the Olympics. You know, I think, you know, like, I think after I tried to go to the Olympics while I was at MIT. That was a crazy thing that I tried doing. And like getting into med school at the same time. And obviously that didn't turn out very well. But like after I didn't make it, I set myself the goal that I was going to make it for the 2020 Olympics. And then, you know, I think every plan that I like aligned, or like every plan that I like sketched out ended up being different. You know, I think, you know, I went to at Stanford, I was there, I trained out of the Stanford boathouse for a little bit, where like their lightweight coach, Kate Burko, finally like suggested that I just go to California Rowing Club and train over there, where I was training with Kara Goller and like other national team people. And it was great. And then the program shut down a year later, like basically unexpectedly, because
California, you'd gone to California and Stanford because you could row there, right?
Yeah, like because I could keep rowing in California, and then yeah, like the California Rowing Club was like there, and I could train, and that I was like, okay, this is perfect. I'm gonna do my first 2 years of medical school, and then take 2 years and just train with these people. And then the club shut down because the founder and funding of the program, he passed away suddenly out of a heart attack. So the whole program shut down, and we all had to move part separate ways. And then, so I ended up without the coach again for a while. And then I was connected with someone in Miami. So that's the whole reason why I moved across the country. I never expected that I was gonna have to leave. And actually the first coach I had in Miami ended up not working out. I only spent a few months with him. But it was thanks to that I met the coach that I currently have, which has been great. You know, I've been with this coach for almost Francisco Villacava for almost 3 years at Miami Row House. And, you know, I think throughout all this time, I just think, you know, things happen for a reason. And then, you know, COVID came, and then everything got pushed the whole year. And that was a whole nother change of plans, because that's, you know, like we're in the middle of a pandemic. I'm training to be a physician, and I kind of felt terrible that I wasn't like on the field, like doing something. You know, all my classmates were like out there, like doing COVID tests, and like some of them were doing research on the vaccine and all of these things, you know, because at Stanford people are awesome. And I was just here like training for Olympics that may or may not happen. So I kind of felt like that I needed to go back. And so I did some like clinical rotations through Zoom while I was here on fields like psychiatry and radiology and things where you didn't need to be like in direct contact with the patient. But then I actually went in person, and I did a few rotations in the hospital, spent a few months there. And I even did my surgery rotation, through which I could barely train because I spent like 16 hours in the hospital. And then when I came back, my coach almost killed me because I was kind of out of shape. But, you know, we pushed through it. We worked harder than we had before. And fortunately, everything played out and we ended up qualifying, you know. But there was many people on the way that, like, even people who were going to go to this qualifier who just decided they weren't going to do it anymore during COVID, you know. So I think the perseverance and like the resilience that you kind of, I feel like everyone who graduates from MIT kind of has that, you know, like I think you need a lot of that just to get through your 4 years at MIT. And just not just like perseverance, but also adaptability, you know, like to just let go of things that aren't like in your control and just, you know, accept it and keep a focus on your goal. And I think, you know, I think obviously rowing, like having picked up rowing while at MIT is like a big reason of why I thought I could do this through med school as well. You know, I think people talk about med school and they're like, oh yeah, it's so hard, whatever. And I sit in med school and I'm like, you know, it's a lot of material and it's a lot of classes and it's a lot of time, but it's not hard compared to MIT, you know? So I think like the fact that I just picked it up while I was doing all these things at MIT, like I feel like I can row while I'm doing anything, you know? And I think I look back the time that I spent at MIT, especially like my first two years. And I look back and I often wonder how I did all the things that I did at the same time, because I don't think I have the same energy to do those things anymore. But, you know, I look back and I kind of amaze myself. And I think part of it is like the shared energy of the people around you, you know, that everyone is pushing themselves so hard to do like all these things around you. And that kind of like motivates you to do that yourself. You know, it kind of gives you the energy.
It's amazing because you're not only an incredible athlete, right? You're also well on your way to becoming a surgeon, as you just described. Would you say that those parallel journeys have, because some people might consider it being a cost that you're rowing at the same time as you're trying to do the med school residency, or that your med school is taking time out of your rowing. But I feel like the sense that I get is that these parallel journeys have complemented one another. So how do you feel like your rowing has kind of made you a better surgeon, or your surgery has made you a better rower?
So, you know, I definitely think that it's more of like the rowing has made me a better doctor. You know, I think, you know, it's a sport that is so challenging and so whole and so complete that like it makes you makes you a stronger person, you know. And I think especially after the time that I've spent rowing in the single after MIT, you know, and all the years of like moving and living by myself and like going to all these competitions and not having a coach sometimes. And I think it's like, it's given me the time more than anything to reflect on like what I want to be and who I want to be as a person, but it also like has made me a stronger person. And I think a lot of what I've had to do these last couple of years has had to do with like mental strength training, you know, and like sitting there in the single, like before a competition and having all this pressure on yourself. I think, you know, a lot of the outcome of these races has to do with like your ability to perform mentally, you know, like it's not unheard of, and it's not uncommon actually that you see people who, you know, can perform a lot better than they do in these competitions, especially in like individual sports, you know. Like I can think of many examples. I mean, not just myself, but like other people who I know who like a couple weeks before a race, like were doing so much better and then they just couldn't do it in the race. And, you know, a lot of it is mental strength. And I think it's the same mental strength that's required to do any kind of thing under pressure, you know, to perform under pressure. And you definitely as a surgeon are performing under the greatest pressure. You know, you have someone's life in your hands, and, you know, it's something that you have to take with great responsibility. And, you know, like this person's family and this person are trusting like their life to you. So I think, you know, it's something to take with great honor, just like it is to represent Puerto Rico in rowing, and something to take with a lot of responsibility. And, you know, I think all the mental training that I've done to be able to compete in the single, like, is definitely like gonna serve me well when I'm trying to operate on someone in the operating room, you know, like definitely like how to get in the zone and just focus on what's happening, like how you need to like feel to like perform well, and when everything around you is like changing and out of your control. So I think they're definitely complement each other. And I think people in the medical field acknowledge this. You know, I want to go into their cardiothoracic surgery program at Stanford, and the director of the cardiothoracic surgery program at Stanford is actually an MIT alum. His name is Joseph Wu, and I met him when I was a first-year student at Stanford. And we've been communicating since then. I like served in a university committee with him and whatever. And I remember when I told him that I wanted to take time off because obviously I needed to make sure that this wasn't going to affect like my medical career. He was like, you know, nobody's going to not take you into their residency program because you went to the Olympics. So that kind of was like the go for me. You know, I was like, okay, these people, there are people who value it. Obviously, there are people who don't value it, are going to be like, what are you doing? Like, why are you trying to do these things at the same time? You know, but the people that matter, at least the people that matter to me, you know, because that's the program I want to get into, like have this open mind of, you know, like there is other ways of like developing the strength you need and the character you need to be a good surgeon. Yeah.
I love that. In many ways, like, I mean, people are kind of what gets us through these things. And you mentioned the director of the Stanford Medical Program, that he reassured you on your journey, but who are the other people who really got you through these almost a decade of training yourself mentally, of becoming more resilient, and finally like hitting that 2K?
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of people, you know, like many people. I actually, in the slideshow, it didn't come through, but the last image was a collage I've made of all the coaches that I've had during my time as a rower. You know, I was part of 2 teams at MIT, the lightweight team and the open weight team. And I think in each their way, you know, like all of the coaches in both programs were a great part of me becoming a good rower, you know, because my first few years in the single, I really was just like doing whatever I wanted, you know, and the training was really getting done in the 8 in the morning, you know. In the afternoon, I was just kind of like doing what I could in the single, you know, and, you know, occasionally I would they would send me to like a training camp, and I would get people from the, what's that called, from the International Rowing Federation, like coach me for a couple weeks or something, you know. But, you know, definitely, you know, like Claire, Amelia, Holly, the previous assistant coach, Previn and Hank, like were a great part of this. I spent a summer between, like the summer 2015, I spent at Riverside, and I had a couple of good coaches there as well, you know, and I think a lot of the time I ended up depending on whoever wanted to help me. And there's a lot of those people on the way, you know. And like most recently, I wanted to train in Boston, and Linda Murray like connected me with the Cambridge Boat Club and helped me out over there. There's been a lot of like little angels along the way, you know. And I think obviously the most recent, well, you know, my coach, Francisco Villacava from Miami International Rowhouse, who's been working with me for the last 2.5 years, obviously has been a great part of my development, both like physically and mentally in the last couple of years. So in the rowing world, that has like all these people have definitely been a great part, you know. And obviously in my personal life, my parents have been a great part, you know. My parents, I think they're sitting here in the meeting, but my parents have been a great sense of support since I started. You know, they attended a few of my races at MIT, even though they had to travel from Puerto Rico, and they've been to some of my international races as well. Some they haven't, because it stresses me out to have them there. But you know, I think it was hard for them to like accept that I was gonna take all this time and just row at the beginning. But I think in the last year or so, they've been more in full support, and you know, it's thanks to them that I've been able to do this crazy thing.
Family is really one of the most important things when it comes to doing challenging things in life. So I guess rowing has been such an important part of who you are and who you've become. And it's played so many different roles through your life, from MIT through Stanford, through Miami now, and over the next couple of months. Beyond that, though, what role do you see rowing playing in your future, both for you kind of like emotionally and also as a professional athlete?
Yeah. You know, I think it's something that's going to be hard to like not do in the future. You know, I think obviously the like super competitive training full time Veronica, you know, I think that's gonna have to like slow down because I need to finish my medical training, you know, and obviously in the rowing, like the International Rowing Federation people have been supporting me all along. They're like, no, you got another Olympic cycle in you. But, you know, I think I grew up as a nerd, as an academic person. I went to MIT and I have other dreams to fulfill and other, what's it called? Like, I think my calling is more to like serve people in the medical world, you know, and I think that's important. And I want to finish my training and I'd like to go back to Puerto Rico at some point when I finish all of my medical training and go back. But definitely rowing is going to be something that's going to continue to be a part of my life. You know, um, I have my boat that I'm going to take with me back to California. And I think for me, like being on the water is something that's really important. Ever since I was a kid, you know, I loved going to the beach all the time. And I think it's kind of like a place of comfort, you know, to like release stress. You know, I think, I remember there was this one time while I was at MIT. This is probably something that, well, probably didn't tell many people about this or anyone because I'm not sure this was right to do. But at the time, I remember this one day that I was like super, super stressed out. I can't remember why, but I was really sad. And at the time, I was a member of the Riverside Boat Club. And it was like 10 p.m. at night. And I just showed up to the club because I had access. And I picked up a boat and I put it on the Charles River. And I went out for a row, you know, and it made me feel a lot better. And there was many times in the med school in California where I just sat in the middle of the bay and like looked around and just admired nature, you know? So I think it's definitely something that I love doing. And something that's going to continue to be a part.
Sometimes the connection to the water that you have in a boat, really, there's no other way of experiencing it. You know, yeah. Today is and we're like, so this is my final question before we open it up to the floor, but today is Pi Day. It's the 14th of March. And it's the admissions day for the class of 2025. What would you say to them?
Wow. You know, I think I would tell them to dream big, to explore, to try as many things as they want, and to not fear failing while they're at MIT. To trust in each other, to always get help when they need it. And to trust that they can make it through. That's what I would say.
Always got to trust that finish line is coming up.
Yes.
Alrighty. Well, we're really fortunate to have a lot of amazing people on this call. At least 3 of your coaches, if not more, and several other people who like care about you and your journey and rowing. And I want to take this moment to invite anybody to ask any questions or drop them in the chat. We can use the raise hand function on Zoom
or you could just unmute yourself and try if nobody's talking.
Veronica, I have a very tactical question. Where did you row in Puerto Rico? Like what body of water?
Yeah, so right now the Puerto Rico Rowing Federation is set up in La Laguna de Condado, which is right next to Old San Juan.
Right.
Yeah, and they sometimes row out. I saw a picture yesterday. They sometimes row out towards like Plaza Las Americas or, in that direction. There is a 2K race course set up in Ponce, in Lago Cerrillos, which is where we can compete, and that's where the Central American Caribbean Games were held in 2010. But where they like have their rowing boats right now is in La Laguna de Condado.
We also have a question from Tom Crawford, class of 2027. Did you row your freshman year?
I did. That's when I started. I started rowing with a lightweight rowing team as a novice in the fall of 2012.
Why did you walk on?
Why did I walk on? I wanted to try. Let's see. I wanted to do a sport at MIT. I loved that the river was right there. I did the interface program in the summer, and they had an option to do sailing during the summer, but it was a lottery and I didn't get in. So I might have been a sailor, but that didn't happen. And so, yeah, there was a couple friends in the program that wanted to try rowing. And there was a TA that highly encouraged me to try rowing. So I tried it. And I also remember talking to the softball coach at MIT because I had done softball in high school too. And I think when Claire found out about this, she didn't really like it. So I dropped talking to the softball team. But yeah.
Well, I think we can.
I did you a favor, Veronica.
Yes.
My strict ways paid off.
It did.
Julian, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I had a quick question. I know like right now we're focusing on the Olympics, but like where do you see yourself like after this? And like, do you still see yourself like rowing or like doing anything with rowing after these races or even in like 5 long term?
Yeah, that's a good question. So right now I am waiting to see where the Central American Caribbean Games are going to be held next year. If they are held in Puerto Rico, which is it's probable at the moment. They weren't the original host, but the original host doesn't want to do it anymore. If they are in Puerto Rico, I'll definitely race there. But definitely, I think competing internationally is going to have to take a step back while I go back to my medical training and finish that off. But one thing that I do want to do, and I mentioned I would like to go back when I finish all my medical training and work in Puerto Rico. One thing I also want to do is help grow the rowing federation in Puerto Rico, which is something that's really hard to do while I'm away. And, you know, the program right now is really small. There's like no one really training at a high level, which is why I row the single and not another boat, because the single is not my preferred boat, but it's the boat I can use to represent Puerto Rico. And what's it called? I would love to help grow the program. And I keep in touch with some rowers, current rowers and past rowers who are Puerto Rican who've rowed through MIT. And I keep their contacts for competitions in Puerto Rico that are happening, especially if the Central American Caribbean Games happen next year. I'm hoping to reach out to all these people and see how many boats we can get to race. But definitely it's gonna be something that's still gonna be there, you know. And you know, the International Rowing Federation also has reached out to me in the sense of me like being a physician and being in rowing to see if I could play a part in the future as one of the physicians who certifies Paralympic rowers to compete because they're always looking for people. So that's also another way in which I could contribute.
That's beautiful. There's a lot of questions about are you planning to race? When are you planning to row? So specifically from Ashan, class of 84, are there any plans to race between now and the Olympics?
Yes, so we're hoping to go to World Cups, specifically the second World Cup in Lucerne. We might go to the third one in Sabaudia, Italy. And we also want to do some high altitude training between either in St. Moritz or somewhere in Spain. So, you know, my coach definitely wants me to like do the best that I can in the Olympics. And so we have all these things planned up, and that's kind of why we have the GoFundMe set up to cover costs for the things and competitions between now and at the Olympics. I think they were going to post, I can post the GoFundMe link on the chat. They had said they were going to post it. Yeah.
And for St. Moritz, are you thinking like, would that be on the water training? So in the summer on the lake?
Yes, correct.
Beautiful place. And another question from Carlos, are you going to row during your surgical residency?
I'll likely row on my days off like I did during my surgery rotation. You know, the one day I had off, I would like row like 25, 30 kilometers and do some weights. I think it's going to be hard to do. I mean, I have an RP3, so that'll be more likely than actually myself getting on the water. Actually, I'm going to connect my computer to my charger because I just realized I'm running out of battery.
How's everybody doing?
Tasha, you need to go into like journalism, television presentation or something.
Yeah.
You are amazing.
You're doing very well.
Yeah.
Really, Veronica is carrying this whole thing.
No. Have you done this before, I imagine?
Yes, no.
I'm back.
All right, hello. Is
Yes.
this your computer or your?
This is my phone.
Great, well, at least we're charged now. Wow, okay, so that's a lot of things to be excited about. I'm particularly excited for you at the high altitude training. My family would go skiing in the like in St. Moritz actually every year, and it's such a beautiful place. I recommend everybody go there. Is it something that a lot of rowers do? To go do high altitude training before going down to the Olympics?
I think my coach like contacts a lot of coaches in Europe, you know, that he collaborates with to write the training programs and things like that. And definitely in Europe, it's something that's used a lot. I don't know about here in the United States because I don't know much about their training program, to be honest.
Well, maybe it's something that they should introduce. All right, Alex, you have a question?
Yes. Hi, Vero. How are you?
Good. How are you?
All right. Hey, listen, out of all the venues you've rowed at, and besides the Charles, let's set the Charles aside, what's been some of your favorite venues to row in?
Oof. That's a hard one. I think definitely not Sarasota, but because it's always windy there. But you know, I think my first World Rowing Championships, which were in Amsterdam, I really liked the fact that the venue was so close to the city. But also I remember like the water in the Aiguille Bellette, like in France for the 2015 World Rowing Championships, the color of the water was amazing. That was like really pretty. It was really like isolated from everything else. But the venue was really nice. You know, I think in rowing in Rio, it's good that there's a lot of things to see and entertain yourself with, which makes the race go by really quickly, but it's definitely not a good venue. It's not one of the best venues for rowing. It's just a good, like, sightseeing.
I guess rowing has taken you a lot of different places, which for some reason didn't enter my mind before. So what are all of the cool places that you've been just in general?
Oh my God, I've traveled a lot, like a lot of places. I think there's a lot of places in Europe that I've been that I like wouldn't have been otherwise. You know, I think, do you want me to go through the list of all the places that I've been?
I guess mainly like, is there a memory that stands out to you?
Is there a memory that stands out? Wow. Oh no, I think I think more than necessarily like, I mean, it's been really cool to just like be in like, you know, I don't think I would have ever been to like Bulgaria if it wasn't because like the Plovdiv, like the 2018 championships were there, or like I went to Poland as well. Like, I think I was surprised by like how like pretty some of these like countries like and the little towns around the rowing venues are, you know. It's been amazing. But I think what like stands out to me the most, like more than like just like where the venues are that because I always traveled with like the development program of the International Rowing Federation, I always got to like room with people from different countries. You know, I think to me, it's more about the people that I've met from all these places. You know, right now I have like two really good friends that I roomed with in the last World Rowing Championships. And one of them is the rower from Namibia, who's the first Olympic rower to qualify from there. And the other one, she rows for Singapore, and her qualifiers are coming up, you know, and we kind of took a picture of ourselves and like, we're like, oh, the Powerpuff Girls, you know. But, you know, I think to me, it's amazing. You know, I've learned about other cultures, about other countries, about, you know, like, I think my first roommate in rowing was from Algeria. And she's Muslim. And I had never lived with someone who was Muslim, you know, and like that to me was really interesting. Like, I love like learning about other people's cultures. I've also roomed with people who I can't communicate in their language. I roomed once with a girl from Indonesia, and I speak English, Spanish, Portuguese, and some French, and obviously she didn't speak any of those. So, you know, like communicating by like sign language and stuff, I think like the people have been more interesting than necessarily like the places themselves, for sure.
That's so fun. Again, it's the people that really make or break an experience. The rest is just an ocean of pain. So final question from Patricia, class of 95. What kinds of sports or exercise do you enjoy when you're not rowing? You mentioned that you danced ballet and did a little bit of softball. So
I mean, I love volleyball. Like that's like my favorite sport outside of rowing. I love volleyball, and it's something that I like competed in the intramural volleyball sports while at MIT for like the Puerto Rican Association, and we like won a couple times. And I had never played beach volleyball, surprising for someone from Puerto Rico, but I like started playing beach volleyball in intramurals at Stanford Med also while I was there. So I think volleyball is something that's like there on the radar. I also really enjoy cycling, which is something that I didn't really do until I started rowing. You know, like, yeah, I biked sometimes back in Puerto Rico, but I never saw it as like a sport, you know, more like let's do a bike ride. But like, I think, you know, I did a lot of cycling when I was a lightweight trying to lose weight. And I think I still like it. You know, I think definitely like when I go to California and there's actually hills and stuff, because here in Miami it's all flat, and I actually got ran over by a car cycling. So not here, but when I go back to California, that's definitely something that I'm going to do.
that's awesome. Yeah, cycling is also something that I only really got into as a lightweight rower. Okay. At figure skating, oh my goodness, that's amazing.
Oh, Bonnie was the one that taught me figure skating at MIT.
Coordination and power, that's a winning combination. All right, we're nearing the top of the hour. I want to hand this off. Well, first I want to thank you so much, Vero, for just being amazing and for being yourself. And I want to hand this off to Linda Murray, who is also on this call to give some final comments.
Thank you, Natasha. You did a wonderful job. And Vero, thank you so much for taking time out of your training schedule. I know you're probably on a bit of a recovery, a down week, so that's okay. But yeah, so really, really great to have you. And I do want to thank especially Amy and Moana from the alumni office for helping us put this together. Big props to the Alumni Engagement Committee as well. Jocelyn had that up, and we've had a lot of fun going back and forth, getting everything set up for today with everyone's traveled and time change. And we're really happy that we made this all work. Thank you everyone for coming today to celebrate Vero and her success as part of MIT's Pi Day and International Women's Day. I know that a few of you have asked how you can support Vero, and we have put the GoFundMe link in the chat room, so in the chat box, so you can go there. And I also want to let everyone know that if you want to stick around for a few minutes, we're going to leave the Zoom open so that you can have full access as long as Vero wants to stay here, and we'll give Natasha a break. So this will be an unmoderated portion of today's event. But other than that, we're looking forward to seeing everyone in a couple of months when we have our next virtual event. So thank you, everyone.